The night before a life-changing exam, a student sits at a desk with a textbook open. The clock shows 11:48 p.m. The pages are full of information that could determine the direction of their future. But instead of studying, the student reaches for their phone. One quick video turns into another. 10 minutes becomes 30. Soon it's 2:30 in the morning and the exam is only hours away. Deep down, the student knows this decision will make tomorrow harder. Yet somehow it feels impossible to stop. If you've ever experienced something like this, you might think the problem is laziness or a lack of discipline. But the truth is far more complicated and far more fascinating. What looks like laziness on the surface may actually be a hidden psychological pattern called self-sabotage. Self-sabotage is the strange and often frustrating act of undermining your own goals. It happens when your behavior moves you further away from the very things you say you want. Procrastinating before an important exam, avoiding opportunities that could help your career, delaying a project until the last minute, even convincing yourself you're not capable when the evidence says otherwise. At first glance, it makes no sense. Why would anyone intentionally get in their own way? But here's the surprising truth: your brain may not be trying to harm you at all. In fact, it may believe it's protecting you. Human beings often imagine the brain as a pleasure-seeking machine. We think it simply chases dopamine and tries to maximize happiness. But modern neuroscience suggests something different. The brain's primary job is not to make you happy. Its main job is to keep you alive. And to do that, it constantly predicts the future. Your brain is always building an internal model of the world. It tries to estimate what will happen next and prepares your body to respond. In ancient environments, this ability helped humans survive. Predicting the sound of a predator in the bushes or recognizing dangerous patterns could mean the difference between life and death. But in modern life, this prediction system doesn't just track physical threats. It also tracks something far more personal: your sense of identity. Your brain quietly develops a baseline belief about who you are and what you're capable of. This baseline acts like a reference point. It tells your brain what level of success, competence, or worth feels normal. Problems begin when reality threatens that baseline. Imagine someone who believes deep down that they are not very capable. Suddenly, they receive a promotion or an opportunity that suggests the opposite. Instead of feeling purely excited, part of their brain feels uncomfortable. The new reality clashes with their internal belief. This creates a psychological tension. The brain senses a mismatch between what it expects and what is happening. And the brain hates mismatches. In psychology, this gap is sometimes called a prediction error. When reality drifts too far from what the brain expects, the brain interprets it as a potential threat. The unfamiliar feels dangerous. This is where self-sabotage can quietly enter the picture. Imagine a talented student who secretly believes they're not smart enough. When they get an opportunity to prove themselves, the pressure becomes overwhelming. If they study seriously and still fail, it might confirm their worst fear that they truly aren't capable. But if they procrastinate and fail, the story changes. Now the failure has an excuse. I didn't fail because I'm incapable, the mind says. I failed because I didn't have enough time. This behavior is known as self-handicapping. By creating obstacles in advance like procrastination, distraction, or poor preparation, people protect their identity from being challenged. If they succeed despite the obstacle, they feel brilliant. If they fail, they blame the obstacle instead of themselves. The strategy may seem irrational, but from the brain's perspective, it maintains emotional safety. There's another version of this pattern that shows up in people who struggle with imposter syndrome. Instead of having a high internal baseline, these individuals hold a very low one. Their brain quietly whispers that they're not good enough, not talented enough, or simply pretending to belong. When success arrives, it creates a huge prediction gap. Praise from others doesn't match their internal belief. Opportunities feel undeserved. Compliments feel suspicious. Rather than embracing success, the brain tries to restore its familiar expectations. This might look like downplaying achievements, avoiding responsibility, or constantly warning others about potential mistakes. Over time, these behaviors can unintentionally convince people around them that they really are less capable. Once again, the brain achieves what it wants most: a predictable world. The strange irony is that the brain often prefers predictable disappointment over uncertain success. Even when we logically understand this pattern, breaking it can feel incredibly difficult. That's because self-sabotage is not just a psychological habit, it also involves biology. When your brain detects a threat to your identity or expectations, a small almond-shaped structure called the amygdala becomes active. The amygdala is responsible for detecting danger and triggering the body's fight-or-flight response. Heart rate increases, muscles tense, attention narrows. From the brain's perspective, something risky is happening. Even though the danger might simply be an exam or a job interview, the body reacts as if survival is at stake. Meanwhile, the part of the brain responsible for self-control, the prefrontal cortex, has to work harder to keep behavior aligned with long-term goals. When emotions run high, this system struggles. The result is a powerful urge to escape the uncomfortable situation. Scrolling through social media, playing a game, watching another video, telling yourself you'll start tomorrow. These actions feel like relief in the moment because they reduce the brain's sense of threat, but they also reinforce the cycle. Breaking this cycle does not require becoming fearless. The key is learning how to work with the brain's natural systems instead of fighting them. One surprisingly powerful tool is writing. When emotions stay trapped inside your mind, they feel overwhelming and personal. But the moment you write them down, something changes. The thoughts move from the chaotic world inside your head into a visible form you can observe. Instead of being completely absorbed in the feeling, you begin to witness it. You might write something simple like, "I'm feeling anxious about starting this project. I'm worried it won't be good enough." This small act creates psychological distance. The emotion becomes an object rather than your entire identity. That distance allows the rational part of your brain to re-engage. Once you regain a little control, another helpful strategy is to lower the stakes of starting. Perfectionism often fuels procrastination. When the brain believes the final result must be flawless, the pressure becomes paralyzing. One way to break that paralysis is to intentionally aim for imperfection. Instead of trying to produce excellent work immediately, you allow yourself to create something messy and incomplete, a rough draft, a basic outline, a simple attempt. Ironically, this removes the threat signal from the brain. If the goal is simply to start, then failure becomes impossible. Momentum begins to build. Another helpful technique involves planning for obstacles in advance. Instead of assuming motivation will magically appear, you identify the moments when distractions usually occur. Maybe the urge to check your phone appears the moment you sit down to work. Maybe fatigue hits when you return home in the evening. By anticipating these moments and creating a specific plan, such as placing your phone in another room, you reduce the number of decisions your brain has to make in the heat of the moment, but the most important step happens over time. To truly weaken self-sabotage, your brain needs new evidence. Each time you complete a task despite fear, each time you act even when motivation is low, you collect data that challenges your old baseline beliefs. Gradually, your brain begins updating its internal model. The line that once defined your expectations shifts. The world becomes less threatening. Success starts to feel less like an accident and more like a natural outcome of effort. This change does not happen overnight. It happens through small experiments repeated many times. Showing unfinished work to someone you trust. Starting a project before you feel ready. Studying for just 15 minutes instead of waiting for the perfect mood. Each action teaches the brain something new. Mistakes, which once felt like evidence of failure, become information, feedback, data points that guide improvement. Eventually, the brain learns that uncertainty is not always dangerous. And when that happens, the need for self-sabotage slowly fades. You begin to realize something important. The problem was never that you were lazy or incapable. The problem was that your brain was trying to protect you using outdated assumptions. Once those assumptions start to change, your behavior changes with them. The next time you catch yourself delaying something important, pause for a moment. Instead of attacking yourself with criticism, become curious. Ask what your brain might be trying to protect. Because the truth is that behind many moments of procrastination lies a quiet fear of failure, fear of judgment, or even fear of success itself. Understanding that fear is the first step toward reclaiming control. And as you slowly retrain your brain, something remarkable begins to happen. The tasks that once felt overwhelming start to feel manageable. The opportunities that once felt terrifying begin to feel exciting. You realize that progress doesn't require perfect confidence. It only requires the willingness to move forward despite uncertainty. But there is one more fascinating piece of this puzzle that most people never notice. Sometimes the same self-sabotage patterns that affect our work and ambitions also appear in our relationships, shaping how we trust, connect, and even push people away without realizing it. And once you understand how that works, you may start seeing certain moments from your past in a completely different light.